Welcome to The Executive Appeal, the show for CEOs of early 8-figure companies who feel like the business only moves when they push. If you're running a $10 to $25 million company and every big decision still rolls up to you, your leaders are smart but misaligned, trust is thinner than you'd like, and you're tired of being the hero that keeps everything moving, this is the room for you. I'm your host, Alex D. Tremble, CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions. I help CEOs see exactly where their own leadership is bottlenecking speed and trust, and then install one clear leadership operating system so their executives take real ownership and the business can run fast without them in every fire. Each episode of this podcast has 2 parts. First, we spotlight the guest, their story, what they built, how they think about leading their people. Then we get honest about what's still hard at the top, where things slow down, where trust and ownership break down, and what they're doing to fix it. No theory, just what actually worked in the room when the cameras were off. Now, let's meet today's guest. Dude, Court, how are you doing, my good friend?
Oh, Alex, it's great to see you, man.
I, I, you and I were just having this conversation offline about the people coming together and the importance of people coming together to create amazing things together, but also just be together. And as I thought about how we should open this episode, it became super simple. When we talk about spotlighting a leader, like you're one of those people I don't know if you need, or I'm not sure if the spotlight can get any bigger, right? The founder and CEO of multiple successful technology startups, including what there's a company that people use, DocuSign, Point.com, Premise Biovision, MetaBright Inc. You have amazing experience in creating these world-changing, community-changing organizations. Your most recent venture being FounderNexus, which aims to triple the success rate of venture-backed startups. And if that wasn't enough, the work you've been doing with your family foundation and aggressively investing in building a stronger and more equitable society. It's it's weird to see. I don't know if it's weird. I won't say it's weird. I'll say when you and I had our first conversation, the thing you said that you were most proud of was the fact that you created something that brought so much ease and happiness to everyone's life. Why? What happened in your past? What led you to be a thinker like that? Like what made you to be you?
Uh, Parents, I think I'll start with my parents, give them great, big shout out. Um, I think the idea of being in a community and participating to the betterment of all was something that I've imagined or thought of since I was very young. And I think this goes back even to sports. And a participant, I was a multi-sport athlete. I was always on teams, or mostly on teams. I skied, I did other things that were more solo. But truly, it was always how can we make the team win? And to me, society is a team. And I don't think of it in terms of countries or geographies or any of these things. I
Mm,
think of it in terms of how do we make people win? How do we make the world win? And as I started thinking through what I wanted to do with this next chapter of my life, after DocuSign went public and I had many choices, obviously, it was clear to me that I wanted to do something that sort of started from the sense of philanthropy. You mentioned our foundation. Our foundation really supports building, strengthening global society and community.
yeah.
And in my non-philanthropic philanthropic life, I want to do the same thing. I want to create something that has lasting value to build better societal outcomes. And if we happen to make money at it, great. It's not my primary objective, but if it works out that way, so be it.
You you said that, so we're gonna dive into your parents because freaking amazing. So, but um, I was really quickly say you said something interesting. You said that team sports and you don't look at the world in terms of countries, it's just like society. We're one big team. And when you think about what does it take a team to function well, like what are those pieces that you think takes a team to function well that you think also applies to a positive society?
So I think my guess is that it's playing to individual strength, and I'll expand on that in a minute, and also being very open and honest about the the downsides or the things you're not good at.
Mm,
And I've always thought that when people were coached to improve the things they were weak on,
mm,
that in my own life turned out to be a waste of time. That was not time well spent. If I had to go back and change something about my career, it would be that to spend less time working on the areas of weakness necessarily and continue to focus on areas of strength. I have experienced again and again that when somebody leans into areas they are strong on, they get to be a world class um, expert in those fields. However, when somebody leans in on things they are weak on, they rarely get to even passable competence.
mhm.
And so, as I build companies, as I build myself, as I build FounderNexus and the generation beyond and beyond that, it's really focused on A, understanding your, I call them superpowers. What is your superpower? And B, how do you lean into that? How do you create an environment where you can bring your superpower to work every day, but with recognition of the fact every superpower has a dark side, and the dark side is
Mm,
the negative things that come out or that others experience about you
yeah.
when you are in your superpower state. If you are aware of both of those things, you can be a much better contributor. So back to team, I think it's about leaning in on where is it good. You wouldn't ask Lionel Messi to be a defender. You wouldn't ask Tom Brady to be on the defensive line. These are not their strengths. This is something that as a sport, you give them a role, you let them lean into it, and the more you let them lean into it, the better they become.
I I could not agree more, and it's so interesting. I think because what you've talked about, I think there have been people who've known this for a really long time. Like, I mean, when it was explained to me the first time years ago, saying, okay, let's say if someone's a 7 out of 10 on something, and you can help them improve 3 points, they become 7, 8, 9, 10. They become 10. If they're a 3 on something and you help them improve 3 points, then they're a 6. They're average. Like it's just like it's simple math. But why do why do you think there's such an appeal or a draw to focus on those things that you're not necessarily good at, or the leaders to say keep pointing out, hey, you're not great at that. Let's focus the energy there.
Just watch the news. The news is all
Oh,
indexed towards negativity, towards negative cells. Telling you what you're bad at gets your attention, and you start to pay attention. Telling you what you're good at, you're like, yeah, I know I'm good at that. You don't need to tell me that. And
wow.
I think as a society, we are, or as a species, we are wired to pay attention to the negative more than the positive. That's the fight or flight instinct. That's sort of in our
Mhm.
reptilian brain to pay attention that way. And I don't think we can functionally change it. So this is why I think a lot of messaging around self-improvement, whether that's weight loss, strength gain, whatever it is you're trying to do, or just leadership skills, seems appealing at first.
Yeah.
And in truth, it often leads to a less than ideal outcome. And I would say my own experience bears that out, where I can say, as I've leaned into my strengths, as I encourage others and my team, how I build teams, find their strengths, find that superpower, find the dark side, and then thoughtfully put teams together that align those roles and strengths and weaknesses such that you get a super team. And this is true again, sports, business, life, friends, you name it.
I if it's okay, I'll give you I will start. I'll put myself out there first. Some what's it called. I'm gonna be vulnerable. Um, about, I'm going to say, like, would you share your dark side? So I would share my dark side
Yeah.
first. Like, I really truly believe that we can solve most issues via dialogue.
Mhm.
Um, and that's where I consistently lean in, like, hey, if we can just get people together, we can talk this out. Um, and I have found, again, it was a learning experience. Sometimes, because I lean so much into that, I don't realize sometimes that is not the answer. Sometimes things can't be talked out. Sometimes someone's going to make a decision and someone's going to leave because they're hurting someone else. And like you said, like, if you're a hammer, everything is a nail, right?
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing, the quote unquote dark side to and what is your superpower, and what's then the dark
Yeah.
side?
Yeah. So I think it's important to express the strength with the weakness. So my superpower is optimization. So I am a born optimizer. I can't do anything in the world. I can't make a cup of coffee, walk across a room, clean something, pick a lane in traffic, or build a business without trying to optimize it, or even pick a restaurant. Okay. So that's a great skill, and I've been able to apply it well in my career and in my life. The dark side is, as an optimizer, I tend to jump quickly to a solution, and I can be, I'm always looking for the best solution. All right, so where does that show up? In my private life, it shows up as, oh, honey, where do you want to go for dinner? Oh, we could go for Chinese. Great. And I was like, but we could also go to, Mexican or Korean or my wife was like, stop, just stop. You don't need to optimize our choice for dinner, okay? Or if she's cooking and I'm a chef, I'm not a chef. I guess I'm a pretty decent cook. She's cooking and I know a better way to cook it, interjecting, hey, you could do stop trying to teach me. Like, you're just driving me crazy. In my professional life, it would show up in terms of my team would come with solutions, or we would be discussing a solution and I would interject and say, hey, I think the best way to get there is this way. And it would take away their agency. It would
Mm,
diminish their ability to contribute in a way that made them feel less. And I had to really understand that even though I'm really good at optimizing scenarios, I need to give them room. I need to let them express themselves. And maybe the what I think of as the optimized path isn't necessary in that moment. And so I had, understanding what it is, I had to adjust my leadership style so that I could let them be successful and reward that success without having to interject my own sense of optimization.
can I ask this amazing? I love the example too. Can I ask, do you remember the protocol, the controls you put into place to slow you down from doing what you were so natural at doing? Like,
Mm.
how do you slow yourself down to allow for that change?
Simply by recognizing that I'm about to do it. It's more a function of not saying something than it is about, because I can quickly address an optimization moment in my mind. And I needed to teach myself to push the pause button, let the other person complete their thought, take a beat to think to myself, is it appropriate and or necessary for me to interject anything in this moment? Is it better to ask a question than make a statement?
Mm,
And then proceed. So it was really an element of self-control, self-modulation, to say, don't talk right now,
yeah.
just listen. And there's a great summary, and I'm trying to remember the exact words. Do you want to be helped, heard, or there's another H word? Hugged, helped, heard, or hugged. Meaning, do you want to be validated? Do you want to just be listened to? I
Yeah.
mean, do you want to be
I
supported,
heard that.
listened to,
Yeah.
or do you want actual assistance?
Yeah.
And I've always sort of put that in the back of my mind and thought, okay, how do I address this moment in this situation? What does this situation demand?
Yeah.
And that's a shorthand. That's obviously, but it's a good reference point because sometimes people just need to be heard
Yeah.
and validated. Um, and that goes to my wife, my kids, my friends, whomever. And And it's also true in work. You can take that into the office without thinking about it in terms of hugging, but more in terms of, do you really need just emotional support right now?
Yeah.
Is that really the thing you're demanding? Just little shorthands like that help.
That's so cool. I'm going to repeat it real quick to make sure everyone heard it. Helped, heard, or hugged.
Yeah.
Um, I heard a variation of that before, and I thought it was so amazing, because I have that problem. I'm always trying to solve someone's problem, and my wife is not always happy about that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember those. It's like this is actually an easier way to remember than how I initially heard it. Um, and again, you just make me think about another quote unquote superpower I would say I have. I'm saying this because other people, I want everyone to listen. Like, you probably have maybe one more than one superpower. Like for me,
Mm.
I would also say I'm really good. I'm a literalist. So when someone says something to me, like I'm listening specifically to what they say. I asked you a question. Did you answer my question or did you go somewhere else? Like I'm really focused on the words and they matter. And it helps me out when I used to write policy. When I'm doing coaching, say, hey, why did you say this? Like it's very intentional. However, I've also found that some people get annoyed. I'm
Yeah.
like, but you said this. Well, that's not what I meant. Well, but that's what you said. Like, and so everyone should realize like there's probably more than one thing that makes you really good at what you do and who you are. And again, being cognizant, as you said, of
Yeah.
what that dark side. Where's Vader? Where's Lord Vader at?
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have it. Like I think everybody has at least one superpower. I had to literally built an entire methodology to help create an interview that will discover somebody's superpower or help them discover it, I should say. And it exposes the dark side as well. Like it's part of you can't have the yin without the yang. And I
Mhm.
think that's understanding that is essential to showing up as a human in kind of any situation.
So, if if I may, I'd love to then ask you why. What made you go after DocuSign? We're going to get into Nexus. We're definitely going to dive into because there's some really great stuff about FounderNexus. I want to start off with DocuSign.
Okay.
Actually, for everyone who doesn't know, was DocuSign your only successful company? And have you ever not had a successful punk company?
I've had both successes and failures. I think that's the one of the hallmarks of entrepreneurship is if you stick at it long enough, you're gonna have failures. And I take those failures with pride because I think it's a mark of trying. And I think trying is always something, and this also, this is sort of a foundational principle around FounderNexus, is you're going to develop battle scars as you build your businesses. And
Hmm.
I say businesses because it's pretty normal in my life experience that somebody that's inclined to found something, succeed or fail as an outcome, they are probably going to line up and do it again. And they're going to take all of that scar tissue along with them. And to me, that scar tissue has incredible value. And I think that's the framework around which we can start to build growth, both as individuals, as leaders, and as a society, is understanding our strengths and weaknesses, the superpowers and dark sides, and then how those come into play and what the actual outcomes are that we help create really is valuable to society. And I think we tend to, at least in the United States, I would say, we tend to try and pack away our less than successful, our failure moments.
Hmm.
And in the entrepreneurial community, I'm telling people, please celebrate those. That scar tissue, that was hard earned.
Yeah.
You really took a beating in that situation and you learned something. So to your question, Alex, since you're a literalist, I'll get back to your question.
I was
Um,
wondering if you're going to catch that.
I've had FounderNexus is my fifth startup. Of the four prior, I've had one major outcome, which is DocuSign. Yes, certainly the most successful. My first company, the one that I had prior to DocuSign, I successfully sold, and it's been operating successfully for the last 30 years. My third company um, wrapped up with financial success, but not a lot of fanfare. My fourth company was an abject failure. It was, the Space Shuttle Challenger. It was going up so fast and then just complete explosion. And we went from, multi-million dollar annualized run rate to out of business in 3 months. quite literally. So it was a catastrophic explosion. And so, yeah, I learned a lot from every one of those experiences. And as I look at where that takes me, again, I think of always playing into your strengths, optimizing. That's sort of where my brain goes. How do I take all of that experience, wrap it up, and do something beneficial for the entrepreneurial community? And the result of that is FounderNexus, because I've spent my lifetime, and I'll preface this by saying, in my research on superpowers, individual superpowers, I at least came to an idea that there are two levels to superpower. There is your principal superpower, optimization in my case, and then there's the domain in which you express that superpower, meaning where are you typically so I could say optimization, right? I could be an optimizer in any of a number of fields. I happen to have chosen the field of venture-backed startups.
Mm.
So if I were to summarize myself, I would say I'm a world-class expert at optimizing venture-backed startups. That's me in a nutshell. Quick and simple. That's who I am. That's how I roll. That's how I show up to things. So for me to start FounderNexus, it was a natural next step. I spend most of my time prior to starting FounderNexus helping founders optimize their businesses. So recognizing that, I said, why wouldn't I try and do this at a larger scale? Because right now, one-on-one can only make a certain amount of impact. And I talk about my desire to impact global society. So I built FounderNexus as a global community to help founders be more successful and be more supported. I literally tried when I launched it, it was all about success. And what I'm learning now that we're a year and a half into it, is that the emotional support, the actual mental health aspect of being able to be in a room of people that have experienced all the trials and tribulations that you have as a founder, has huge mental health benefit, huge, far more than I ever imagined. And so I don't want to diminish that. I want to celebrate that and say, we need more of that. We need more community combinations where we are helping each other as a community, because not only does it feel good to say, hey, these are the areas that I did well, and these are the areas I didn't do well. But when you can see that your experience helped somebody else, it's like plugging yourself into a light socket. And so I don't care whether that's another founder, somebody in a different country, somebody that's, in a different situation than you are. The ability to help is also a human virtue. It's something that we express and we kind of need to express. And I find that that's giving people room and a space to occupy where that's their principal goal, is to get help while giving help. I call it lift while you climb, is an immensely rewarding experience. So that's a little bit about the backdrop of successes and failures.
Well, I actually want to turn and go directly into Nexus for a while, FounderNexus, and but I want to make one comment based on what you said before you have a short commercial. You said in entrepreneurship, if you work hard enough or long enough, you're gonna have a failure, or you're gonna have success. And
No, I said you're going to have a fail. I actually said you're going to have a failure. So I want to make sure we're
yeah, okay.
indexing on the right thing.
So if you work long enough, you're gonna have a failure.
Yeah.
And I would, if you don't mind, I would propose, if you work long enough, you'll have a success, because there is no success without first failure. You have to learn. Like, no one is perfect at anything, and so everyone needs to know. Like, the first time you try something, the first time you try to create that system or that product, it's not going to work, and that's okay. But you learn something from it, and you get better, and you get better, and and then you create this massive organization that you sell, that you run, that you lead. But you have to be willing to take those losses in order to get to the success. Hope you didn't mind me throwing that in there.
No, that's great. I agree with the principle.
So let's talk about FounderNexus. Quick question. Do you have a great team, but it still feels like you're doing all the thinking and things aren't moving as fast as they could? I built a free 10-minute executive leadership diagnostic to show you exactly where trust, proactivity, and productivity are leaking on your team, and what to focus on this quarter. If you're watching, scan the QR code on your screen now. If you're listening, go to gpsleadership.org/diagnostic. You'll also find the link in the episode description. Now, back to today's episode. So anyone who knows you knows that, if I again propose this, you can feel free to weigh in. You are an amazing individual yourself, period, point blank. But you know what? You also had amazing parents, and they exposed you to so much.
Yeah.
And they taught you, like, from almost like from the beginning, you were around these things. But not unfortunately, but surprisingly, it didn't start there, because your grandfather was doing amazing things. And I say this just to tee up just the importance of being around the right group of people, because at that point, learning becomes, I feel like it becomes almost osmosis if you're around the right people. So to your point about FounderNexus, like, what is the difference between, intentionally going into a group, an organization, a support unit such as FounderNexus, and saying, well, I have some good friends, some good mentors I can just talk to. I can ask questions. Here's YouTube. What are your thoughts?
So I have layered thoughts on that. It's a great question. So I think let's start with the fact that every individual has what I call a circle of trust. A circle of trust could be your family, it could be your colleagues, your co-founders, a group of board members or advisors, or some group of people that you trust and work with. And I think that circle is of a certain size. It doesn't matter how big or small that is. It's just that's your circle of trust. And one of the things that I learned over time is that if I could expand my circle of trust and do so thoughtfully, I benefit. Okay, so since I'm an optimizer and I'm always looking for ways to do that, in real life, my circle of trust is made up of people that I've gotten to know over time. So it stays somewhat static, right? It's not ever changing. It can add a couple of people here and there, but getting them to pay attention when I need them, getting them to engage thoughtfully in the successes and failures that I want to share or get excited about, is also tied to their availability, their mental state, their health, et cetera. Okay. Part of the reason FounderNexus is so meaningful to so many people, and again, whether it's mental health or just direct support, is that this is a large global community, hundreds and hundreds of founders now and going to thousands, who make themselves available. And it's an actual rotating, there are people that show up every time or most times to various things and sessions, and they're wonderful to have. But every time you touch a FounderNexus event, you're being surrounded by people that have lived your circumstance and are coming there with the full intention of helping and sharing. But they're going to be different people time to time, which I find very invigorating, because each time you show up in a room, or I show up in a room, and I've done this for 30 years, I learn something.
Yeah.
I can't help it. Even these young people who are doing it for their first or second time, they're trying stuff that I never thought to try. And each of us as an individual will gravitate towards things that feel authentic to us. Meaning, if I tell you, Alex, here was my experience, here are the nuggets that I took out of that. As an individual, you can only absorb either 0 or 1 of those, because you're you, and that's great. I celebrate that. You're different than me. You have a different background. You have a different company, different customer, different objective, different philosophy, different values, maybe. Okay, so by talking to me selectively, you might pick up something that you can actually use. However, if I put you in a room of 10 of me or 20 of me, or even just 5, the simple fact that each of us comes from a different perspective is going to mean that probably from each person, you're going to collect something of value to you. Okay. And so instead of giving you advice and saying, do this, I say, this is what happened to me. This was my experience. This is what worked. This is what didn't. You get to pick which of those nuggets to pick up and are authentic to you and implement. So the more people I can put in a room that have that lived experience, the more nuggets you get to collect. And so the accumulation of that is then becomes the support system around which you start to build new thinking, new growth opportunities for your business, your company, just frankly executing at a higher level. And that's really what we're about. I mean, if I were to boil down why does FounderNexus work, it works because we help you make slightly better decisions every time, no matter what your circle of trust is. You come into this room, you're going to leave with ideas to make better choices and executional decisions. Over time, that compounds to success. Whereas your own circle of trust may or may not work. Often it doesn't. So
no, I was going to say to your last point in working backwards. So often it doesn't. I think that's an important point because there are. So this is not a knock to anyone in the past who's given me advice, right? Just everyone just know, please. I love you. Thank you. Appreciate it. But what I realize is that it's very different to be an executive within a large organization, even a mid-sized organization. That is very different than being a founder of a company. Very different. And so the advice that I would receive was really nice and it was thoughtful. But when I got around other founders, when other people, and they understood immediately, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, this is, you just do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, what? Seriously? Like, the point being, like, being around people who are where you are where you're going, like you said, speeds up the process, makes the quality, increases the likelihood that the quality of information they give you is at higher quality. And if I can then to another point you made, which is I was talking to my wife the other day about this another group I belong to, and she's like, is that a good use of your time? And I told her, I was like, look, sweetheart, no, I didn't say, look, sweetheart. We were talking about it, and I was like, look, I said, I am absolutely 100% confident that I will figure this out. 100% confident I can figure it out by myself. I'll figure it out. And I'm also 100% confident I'll figure it out faster with this group.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about is how do you learn at speed? How do you, and there's a book called, oh my God, 4,000 weeks. 4,000 weeks. We only have so much time. We have 4,000 weeks on average to live. We only have so much time. So where do you want to allocate your time and your resources to? Is like, can I speed up this learning process, or I'm going to, allow myself to beat upside the head a few more times? Again, you choose yours, but there's an option.
I'm going to amplify that, and I'm going to plus one to that, and I'm going to tell you that it's speed and quality. And I would say we all have to go quickly and use our time effectively, but effectively also means that those decisions have to be of high quality. Yes. And so I describe the success as a founder in terms of what I call the success equation. So the success equation simply says that, as you pointed out, founders have an outsized impact on their business. They carry a slightly bigger load than a hired executive, actually a much larger load. If you imagine every decision a founder makes as an integer from 0 to 1, as a long multiplication chain equals probability of success. That is the success equation. Okay. So if you get every decision you ever face 100% right, ones across the board, 1 times 1 times 1 ad infinitum, 100% chance of success, thereabouts. That's what the equation would say. It also says that if you get even one of those decisions dead wrong, a 0 in a multiplication chain, the whole thing fails. Mm-hmm. And if you get even over 1,000 decisions, if you even get 3 or 4 below average, below 0.5, the equation is trending to 0 quickly. So over the life of a venture-backed founder, we succeed on average at about a 3% total rate. And I define success as return invested capital or more. 3%. That means we have a 97% failure rate as venture-backed founders. We need to do better. And I'm not telling people that join FounderNexus that I'm going to give you the ability to make perfect ones across the board. But what I am saying practically is whatever you and your circle of trust would lead you to decide in this moment, however you will implement that decision on a 0 to 1 scale. If you come into a room of other people who've lived that same experience, you will inherently make a better decision. Okay, so what does that look like mathematically? If you were a 0.3 or a 0.4 based on your experience in circle of trust, and I can get you to a 0.6 or a 0.7 simply by putting you in a room of experienced founders. Over time, that equation is dramatically changing your odds of success. So it's not about perfection. We aren't trying to be perfect. We're trying to be better, but better at every incremental decision statistically is, and mathematically, is why this kind of model works. Why should we show up and put in ourselves in these rooms? Why should we devote time, to your point, energy, focus on being in these places? That's why, because it will really, really change our probability of a positive outcome.
I know we're going to start wrapping up soon. So I have two more questions I'm going to slide in here before we start our descent and land this plane. The first one is again, you're you're in an amazing position where you get to talk to and interact with and hear the challenges of a lot of people in this space. So from a leadership perspective, um, what are you seeing as the biggest challenge that these founders are having from a leadership perspective?
Mm. Certainly in the community I serve, the venture-backed community, raising capital is always probably either at or near the top, right? And we're in a funding environment right now where it makes that specifically challenging, right? The one that comes up most often, though, is team construction, right? Interpersonal relationships, team. How do I hire the best people? How do I retain them? How do I motivate them? How do I create from my people? Because at the end, every company is only as good as their people and how well they execute. How do I do that at a higher level? And I think this is an area where, again, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, trying to come up with solutions. That would be certainly one. And then again, in the world of founders, and I define the core concept of making the most of limited resources, because almost always we are, as a group, struggling to not just raise money, but gain awareness, gain new clients, build our business. We don't have enough people, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time to do things. And so, again, I spent a ton of time building a whole protocol around how to make the most of limited resources. And that's another thing that I think most founders struggle with. And I think there's a whole school of thought, and now I even built a whole very functional methodology how to think about that and how to execute against that.
If you had 30 seconds to give them advice on that people piece where you said how to retain the people, retain, acquire, how to identify who should be offboarded, what would be the 30-second, hey, at least take this idea and start working with it?
Again, it goes back to, what is their superpower? What are they really good at? Does that align with the role they have been assigned? If it doesn't, move them to a role it does, or move them out. Because you want, as a leader, to have the people in your organization bringing their superpower to their job every single day.
Yeah.
If you do that, in my experience, it yields success.
Thank you so much. And again, I'm going to open it up. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience as we begin to wrap up today?
Yeah, I think, as founders, we tend to go heads down. We are so narrowly focused on what we do that it's very hard to stick your head up on a regular basis and seek community that can help you. You stick in that circle of trust I talked about because you feel safe there. It's easy. I would encourage you to find communities where you can express yourself and be able to learn from those communities. FounderNexus is an example, but I would say there are others for you. That would be a great way to enhance your ability to execute and feel good about your business successes and to learn from your failures.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Court, for sharing your story, your advice, your honestly, your passion with us today. Um,
Yeah.
it has been wonderful for me. Everyone, you know where I'm going with this. If you haven't already done so, like, subscribe, comment, share what was the moment that you felt you had your aha moment. And as always, I encourage you, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See you. Thanks for listening. listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.